Call to order the March 6th Finance Committee meeting of the whole for Radnor Township School District. Thank you. We're going to start with introductions. All the whole board's here, and administrative remarks from Michelle Dico.
I don't have any administrative remarks. Mr. Baxter, do you?
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't know. Oh, we'd like to call the first public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Welcome, Mrs. Spurtle. I hope you had a chance to sign in over on the side.
This
Great,
is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Cindy Spurtle. Oh, Lord. First comment is.
I just turned it down. We're like listening here. Somebody might.
Want me to shut it off?
Yeah, shut that off for a minute.
If you have your phone next to the microphone, it can actually, I didn't realize yours was there, but
Okay.
you shouldn't have your phone
You
next
should
to the
be okay
microphone.
now.
It can cause.
Now we're okay.
Yeah, we
Thank
should be.
you.
Okay.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
I don't know why it's crossing.
Yeah, just push it further away.
Push it further away. It's fine.
We can hear.
Can I do it without you can hear
Just
it?
like that. That's
We're good
fine.
right there. We'll close.
All right, starting off, this is Finance Committee, and a lot is to be approved by, as you call it, the meeting of the whole board that's here tonight. And there weren't any attachments, so there was no budget.
This
for the
is a
public to
demonstration
review.
of Wirecast.
And I have no idea what the contract with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia is. And there wasn't an attachment for the exceptions. Take that back. So it's tough for the public to prepare to make comments on this meeting because there wasn't anything at all provided in, it isn't provided in. I was hoping to see it in this. And I'd like to bring up one other point.
This
and
is a
that
demonstration of
since it's a
Wirecast.
Finance Committee meeting and comments were made at the Commissioners meeting, which I was
It's a
not
public comment by email.
about all of the administrative time that has been spent on a matter before the board. And that's a matter of one of the members of the board and a complaint that's been filed by a teacher. And my concern is the amount of money that's being spent, additional, if there's additional time for staff, if staff time is being taken away from education.
This
for
is
the
a
students.
demonstration of Wirecast.
That's not good, and so my question again, I will ask is, and it was explained during the meeting that it is in the terms of the contract with the teachers that if there is complaint filed, there has to be an investigation. But if there were any way that in future years there could be amendments, I know we're under a 5-year contract, but why can't the teachers sit down, the complainant sit down with the individual with whom they have a problem?
This
and
is a
negotiate
demonstration
this
of Wirecast.
as an opportunity to cut down on the finances. The other thing that I learned in the commissioners meeting was that the
The board meeting.
board meeting, I'm sorry, I
Yeah, that's okay.
apologize. I'm watching commissioners, and this time I watched the board meeting, which gets me confused, I apologize, school board meeting. Usually I'm there. Was that an investigator was hired and started work on this.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Prior to the board even approving the investigator. So the district started paying money to investigate it that had not been approved. I know in the meeting that the board did approve it in retrospect, but I think this is something that should be approved by the board before it was even started.
Thank you. Okay, so has everyone had a chance to, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Burton. Come on up.
I'm sorry.
This is a
Sometimes I
demonstration of
I would just like to
Wirecast.
commend the board for looking at the exceptions tonight, and I would hope that you would include, given the early date of this meeting, to include all the exceptions in the budget. You can always not have them later on, but it's better to have them in the front end of the budget than to try to make it up after it's too late. So I would encourage you to include not only the percentage that you're allowed under the referendum, but also include
This
all
is
the
a demonstration
exceptions.
of Wirecast.
And finally, I would say that based on past practice, it's not the only thing the board has ever approved after the fact that money has already been spent, so.
Thank you, Dr. Winters. Is there any other public comment? Dr. Barczyk.
This is an email from Gail Morrison, 111 Poplar Avenue, Wayne, PA, to the Radnor School Board. In my earlier public comment, after reading another warning to parents, as I did the evening of March 5th, I wanted to emphasize how
This
important
is
it
a
is that we all
demonstration
advocate
of
for
Wirecast.
better gun control, every single one of us. The incidents Mr. Bechtold has had to communicate to the RHS community are frightening. He should not have to deal with this fear for students and staff. None of us should. The answer is not more police. The answer is more fencing and more locks and more training on active shooter situations and hiding students in closets. The answer is everyone, all of us, demanding better laws and better enforcement. This board and all of us should support an extreme risk protection order, or ERPA, law in Pennsylvania.
This is a
These
demonstration of
These are
Wirecast.
also termed red flag laws. If someone is a threat to themselves or others, law enforcement can act to prevent a tragedy by removing guns from the situation. We can do a lot more, but I urge the Radnor School Board and the Radnor community at large to start there.
Dr. Barczyk, thank you. I just want to clarify, this is the email that was supposed to have been read at the board meeting, but Mr. Petiti was not able to find it, correct?
I have this documented as 3/6 Finance Meeting Public Comment.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Is there any other public comment?
This is a
Okay,
demonstration
seeing
of
none,
Wirecast.
has everyone had a chance to read the minutes, and are we okay with the minutes as presented? All right, great, we're gonna roll right into our first agenda item. Mrs. Deco, if you could go over the pilot contract with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, thanks.
So keeping with Mr. Bachelor's request that items that are going to be on the board agenda for approval are reviewed through committee prior to their approval. This is on the finance agenda this evening. The board actually gave permission for this to be.
This is a demonstration of
pursued.
Wirecast.
Can't remember exactly when it was, but it was probably July or August. The document is now ready to be presented to the board for approval. If you recall, the Jewish Federation of Philadelphia had 2 pilot agreements with the district in the past, one for back taxes and one where there's agreed upon assessment on their property and they pay it at the current millage rate. They have paid all of their back taxes, so what we will be approving is the continuation
This is a demonstration
of the
of
current agreement
Wirecast.
at the agreed upon assessed value at the current millage rate. And that's what you will see on the agenda for approval at the March meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Deco. Do we normally have those pilot agreements in our board packets? Or for the public? 2 questions there.
I don't recall
I
ever
don't think I've seen
having that approved. Typically, when we put it on the board agenda, it's listed as a parcel number, and there's not a lot of detail that is presented, just what needs to be
This
presented.
is a
in order for the
demonstration
board to
of
approve the
Wirecast.
agreement.
Right, so this is, so that we don't have the pilot agreement online available as an attachment is not unusual.
It is not.
Okay, does anyone have any questions, comments? Yes, Mike?
Oh, no.
Oh, you waved your hand at them. Anyone? All right.
Not the questions of.
Not at the moment, but I mean, I would like to at least understand what the guidelines are. Before we vote on it at the next meeting, I don't need it now, but we're gonna be voting on it at our public meeting, right?
We are, so
Okay.
what we
This
can do
is
is
a
we can make a
demonstration of
copy
Wirecast.
of the prior agreement, and we can make a copy of the proposed agreement that's going to be approved, and we can include that in your board packet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Or
Okay.
just can you just give us a difference memo or explainer? Because I'm not gonna go through it line by line, sorry. But if you could just, I mean, you know the differences between
I'm
the 2.
actually going
So-
to a conference this evening, so that will not be in your packet this week unless Jackie might be able to put that together. I'm not certain, but we will.
It will be in the board
This
packet
is
for
a
the meeting on the 20th.
demonstration of
Yes.
Wirecast.
Great.
Yeah, by that,
Super.
yeah.
So we'll make sure you get what you're looking for, but it won't be this week.
Thank you so
That's
much.
fine.
Alrighty, and with that, let's move right into the 2018-19 draft budget. Everyone was asked to bring their binders. And so the materials have not dramatically changed, correct, Michelle? You're gonna go over that?
The
Great.
materials have not changed. I appreciate Mrs. Spurtle's comment. We should have put something on board docs that reference people back to the the budget
This is a
documents with where
demonstration
they're
of
located.
Wirecast.
So we will update the board docs so that that is referenced, and if somebody is looking at this meeting agenda, they will know where to get the documents. The draft budget that was published back in December is the same as it is currently. We just recently received some additional information and we'll be incorporating those changes into the budget. You may remember the original discussions that we had where the projected revenues were less than our projected expenditures. So the draft budget had a shortfall of just over $1.5 million.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We know that there's a number of things that we still need to look at. Administration has been having meetings to try and close that gap. At the current time, we've not made any of those adjustments. We just received our special education estimates from the IU, and Kevin Kane is working on giving us revised numbers. We had all of our justification meetings with all the various departments. The various departments have are going back and making some additional changes. Curriculum made some changes to their budget, which they just gave to us.
This is a demonstration of
Wirecast.
Wirecast.
Second look rates for medical insurance. The good news is that the medical insurance rate dropped. The original was, I believe it was 10.42, but what was incorporated into the budget was 10%. The second look rate came back at 9.76, which is less. Unfortunately, that will only generate about a $22,000 reduction to the current budget. So we're going to continue to work on those.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We just started to have some conversations about staffing, and class size was presented to facilities right before this meeting. Those are things that we look at very closely when we go through the budget in order to make sure that we're making any changes that we can in order to close that gap. We do not have any funds in the draft budget for capital improvements, so that will need to be added. We've just had initial discussions at the facilities committee and the finance committee.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And we'll continue to do that as we go through the budget process. We anticipate that we will approve the preliminary budget, which is also known as the proposed final. I know that sounds a little silly, but that is how it's actually identified, at the April meeting, with the intention of doing full approval for the final budget at the May meeting. Do you have anything you want to add?
Okay, so, does the.
I just had one.
Hang on a second. Oh, sorry, I wanted to just finish
This
saying one
is a
thing.
demonstration of
Want to see if we're going to
Wirecast.
have a lot of questions, a lot of discussion, or high level. Is the board interested in that? Do we have a lot of questions? Okay, great, Patty, go ahead. Oh.
And I apologize. May I just jump in also before we go to board questions? Similar to last year, the administration right now is going through that process of looking at that gap and looking at what changes we could make to cover that. There are many things we identified that we're going to also look at, as part of some yearly goals this year. One of those pieces was we wanted to reevaluate some of the administrative restructuring that took place. So that piece will be coming in the next few months in discussions with the school board. And we also said we were looking at some of our administrative positions, specifically the fact that we have not filled that operations position. And we've been evaluating that position as well and how we want to move forward next year with that. So that will become part of the discussion that we will have in the upcoming months as well, all of those pieces.
This is a
So
demonstration
Mike,
of
I was just seeking
Wirecast.
clarity. So what I thought I heard you say, I just want to be sure I actually heard it, was we had a $1.5 million gap, revenue versus expenses, and we're obviously we're still working on it. But as of right now, other than minor tweaks that you've just mentioned, that gap is still relatively close to that 1.5 million. You're still working on it. Is that what I heard?
That's an accurate statement, yes.
Okay.
And still working on it, administratively, we've been discussing
This
a lot of
is a
different options
demonstration of
as part of our review,
Wirecast.
but yes, we're still working on it.
So what's the plan for I heard the proposed final is April. So between now and April, what's the plan for discussing what the alternatives or what the options are? Or are we gonna do it at the April meeting? I just wanna understand what the process is.
Yeah, some of them will be discussed at the April meeting. Similar to last year, I don't know if we'll use the bucket analogy again, but we may use the bucket analogy as well to look at what are some our opportunities.
This is
Some
a
of the pieces that are
demonstration of
personnel related,
Wirecast.
we're gonna have to discuss as a board, dealing in a personnel meeting, we would need to discuss, so we'll be scheduling some time between now and April to do that.
Okay, thank you. Lydia?
Yeah, Michelle, I need you to clarify again, it was my understanding that we were not gonna qualify for any exceptions, so I don't know, well, I guess it was just someone's comment that.
We can actually move to exceptions,
What-
because that's a good part of this conversation, but.
We could, except that I wanted to find out what the questions were,
This
because
is a
then
demonstration
my
of
plan was to kind of pose to
Wirecast.
the board. At this point, we, Michelle has not the Peasers money yet to close the gap. We have not made any final decisions about capital spending, which could, result in transfers from our capital funds, but that does not close the gap, because that just means we'd be spending money on some capital expenditures. Michelle, we had a conversation last week in planning. I know you're still trying to finalize numbers from.
This is a
from the tech
demonstration of
department.
Wirecast.
The curriculum committee had a technology presentation last week, and if the board ultimately decides to move forward with the technology plan, we are going to need to spend some money on infrastructure improvement for improved communications up at the high school. I'm just trying to lay out for everybody kind of some of the things I would like you to be thinking about, because we will have to address these, Patty, to answer your question about what's the plan moving forward. And then we will also have to have a conversation about how much, if any,
This
money
is
we
a
would want to
demonstration
allocate
of
from
Wirecast.
funds to close the shortfall. And Ken is referencing and Sarah, because last year he was very creative with his buckets
We were
of
there for
explaining, right, exactly,
We may
ways that.
change the color of them this year.
Okay, great. So ways of approaching the, closing the gap, which is gonna lead into Michelle's conversation about exceptions in just a moment. So I do think everyone needs to be giving some thought to this. It helps that we
This
haven't even
is a
put the Peasers money
demonstration
in.
of
It helps
Wirecast.
that, we actually have kind of a lot of Peasers money. We don't seem to be able to spend it down. The 5-year plan, I think, is now in year 6 or 7. We do have a significant fund balance, and we could use that to cover some of the teachers' positions that we have wanted to hold as placeholders and watch positions, and we had all sorts of words for that, which does dovetail with the conversation about staffing and class size, which, as Ken mentioned, he's going to be addressing. We have said as
This
a board in
is
the
a
past that we're very
demonstration
committed
of
to our low class
Wirecast.
size. If that continues to be the case, then we have to be prepared to have some money set aside for additional staffing if the need arises. Not a lot's changed right now. I think we'll continue to get some updates in the finance committee meetings in April. Certainly if we feel the need to have another committee meeting of the whole, we will do that. But I do need everyone on the board to be thinking about how they feel about those different options for closing the shortfall. And then
So
leading
that-
into exceptions. Michelle, thank you.
So there's,
This is a
in
demonstration of
addition
Wirecast.
to things that Mr. Batchelor mentioned, we will also look at the current fiscal year. We're working on the projection for where we think this fiscal year is going to end. And like we did last year, we may come back to you and make some recommendations to move some money in the current fiscal year to help cover the costs in the future fiscal year, because we know that we aren't going to spend those dollars. So to answer Lydia's question, when we originally had discussions about the Act 1 exceptions at the
This
Finance
is a
Committee
demonstration
meeting,
of
I had
Wirecast.
indicated that I did not think that we would qualify for any exceptions, but I didn't know for certain because PDE didn't have the website up. And I had worked through the previous worksheets. When PDE did put up the website, we did qualify for a special ed exception, for retirement contributions. The amount that we qualified for is only $14,687, so it's very insignificant. My recommendation is that we try to
This is a
balance this budget
demonstration
without
of
utilizing
Wirecast.
that very small exception. It's not a lot of work for us to apply for the exception. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it. However, $14,687, I think that we should be able to find that in the budget and hopefully be able to balance this budget through a number of different items that Susan Stern mentioned earlier. We did not qualify for the special education exception, and the reason we didn't is because our expenditures went down between
This is a demonstration
15
of
16
Wirecast.
and 16 17, and as a result of that, that didn't allow for us to qualify, and we also received some additional revenue from the state for special education expenses, which resulted in us not qualifying as well.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about that? Sarah?
Can I just ask, what, other than not having to do the work, which I get, what the benefit is to the district of not
This is
applying
a demonstration
for
of
retirement
Wirecast.
exception?
There's really no benefit for not applying for it. It doesn't hurt you in any way. It doesn't alleviate you from doing it in the future. It's just a formula that you need to work through. It all depends on the resolution that you pass when you pass that draft budget. If you pass a resolution that says you're not gonna go over the index, you have an extended period of time to work on your budget. You don't have to have your preliminary out until 30 days.
This is a
before you're gonna
demonstration
approve
of
the final, and
Wirecast.
your final budget isn't due until June 30th. If you pass a resolution that says you're going to apply for exceptions, you have to have your draft budget available for the public much earlier, in December. Typically by the end of December, you need to have that public available. But it doesn't hinder the district's ability to apply in the future. It just gives you options. And that's one of the things at finance we've discussed in the past. And we've gotten larger exceptions in prior years. And
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Some flexibility as we developed our budget and figured out how to balance it and cover our shortfall.
We don't ask for the $14,000 or almost $15,000 exception this year. It's money lost though. It's not money we can apply for next year.
We already asked for it.
We did
This is
already.
what we're awarded to use. It's
Okay.
up to us now whether we actually use it or not.
Okay.
And there's no other work, it's just a question of the board's
Filling out
decision about what levers to pull to close the gap. It's
This
open
is
to
a
us, it's an option.
demonstration
Michelle's
of
just suggesting that we
Wirecast.
should be able to close the gap without having to use that 14,000.
And you're saying, but the publishing of the board budget was already done in
Done.
December, so
Yeah.
that's not really a time savings to us.
And you're right, it's not money you're ever gonna get back. I mean, it's money for this year.
I understand it's not necessarily a
but
lot of
you're never
money.
gonna have a chance to get it again.
Sarah, in the fall, we had discussed as a board, and our timing on our budget cycle right now is due to the fact that in the fall, we
This
let the
is a
state know that we
demonstration
had an
of
intention to
Wirecast.
apply for exceptions.
Right.
And so that's the reason we had the budget binder back in January, whether we used it or not. So, you know, I wanted to get a sense from the board. You know, we're not obliged to figure this out tonight. It is possible we will use this small amount, in which case our tax increase will be, you know, the index plus a very tiny amount, or Michelle will close the gap without using this, and this will be a year that we won't actually go above index, it'll just be index.
This
If
is
the
a
board has a strong
demonstration
feeling
of
about this one way or
Wirecast.
another, tonight would be a good time to let me know that. If not, we'll just continue on we're gonna try to close the gap a lot of different ways. So that's why I wanted to kind of get feedback from the board on that as well.
Last year, I think, Michelle, you started to make us this chart where we can follow on a
Yes.
year-to-year basis how we are, what we're doing in terms of our budget and whether we go to the index or exceptions and what that translates to in terms of dollars and millage and such. Would it be possible to
This
update
is a
that going into
demonstration
this
of
year, so
Wirecast.
especially for new board members, they have some historical context?
And I believe you're referring to the document that showed what our millage increase was for the previous fiscal years. Is that the document you were
Yeah,
referring
we
to?
went
that
back
you tried-
about 10, 12 years though,
Yeah.
actually, and I didn't bring the copy of it tonight, but I think that's a really useful thing to put in front of your binder every year, so that you will always remember what you've done previously.
And we can certainly update that. We'll make sure that that's included. We can send that out to everybody.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
So what might be helpful? I don't think we need to make any decisions on this tonight personally. I'm not sure we even need to really provide direction. Because there's no real action to be taken at the moment. You guys are doing the work you need to do. But I thought you were gonna mention that, though I know which spreadsheet you're talking about. But can we, like we've done in the past, just get here are a list of levers that we have to pull on. The exceptions are 14,000, this is that. so that when we come in, we at
This
least
is a
can look at it.
demonstration of Wirecast.
Before the April meeting, when we have to vote on it. If we at least could get in our packets, what are the things that we should take into consideration? Susan rattled off a number of them, but let's get them in writing so that we, in order to really think about it, I think we need to see those numbers staring at us so that we know how big they are, et cetera.
We can certainly put together
You've done it
something like
before.
that, we've done it in
Yeah.
the past.
Yes.
It's something that we can put together so board members have that
Yes.
available to them.
So,
This is a
I just wanna
demonstration of
just touch base with the board.
Wirecast.
So what I'd like to do is, Patty, to your point, the levers and the buckets, we've got levers and buckets, but, our April meeting, our April finance meeting, Patty, I think is exactly the time when we need to be seeing those hard numbers, and you and I will probably even be reviewing them before that, finance planning meeting. So I think everyone should expect to see that in their April finance meeting packet. Whether you're on the committee or not, it will still be in there.
This is a
and that will be
demonstration
good
of
right into
Wirecast.
the April board meeting, because this is really, this is now really the final 6 weeks of all that work. And, one of the levers will be, as far as giving you a heads up tonight, fund balance, PSERS, the use of 14,000 in exceptions, whatever further refinement Michelle and Ken come up with. So, are there any other questions about any of that, or thoughts on the process, or thoughts on where we are right now, so that we can give administration whatever direction they may need?
I just want to
This is a
remind
demonstration
that
of
even in April,
Wirecast.
when you vote on, and maybe Michelle, you can clarify for all of us, even when we vote on a proposed final budget, we can still change it up until June 30th, whenever that night is that we vote on it.
Yep.
We can't go higher, but we could go lower. So we can ebb and flow how we need to.
You actually can go either direction.
You
can
can go higher.
or you can go lower. My recommendation, of course, is that
We
you
were
don't
always
go.
limited.
No, you're
Well,
not.
you mean to Act 1, she means you can't go higher than Act 1.
This is a
No,
demonstration
I
of
meant that we
Wirecast.
told the community our budget was going to be Act 1, or maybe not even Act 1. We weren't gonna go any more than 2%. I thought we couldn't increase that later.
No, you can. You can go
Oh, I
either
always thought we
direction.
were stuck going down. But okay, either way, we can still modify up to the day we vote on it in June.
Yes, except we would love, if possible, we'd like to have the final vote in May if
May,
possible.
right,
whenever we choose.
But if we need to go to June, yes, that is
Yeah, I'd
more
like
than
to do it in May.
acceptable to do.
I ideally would love to do it in
Yes, I
May.
think we'd all.
Well,
This is a
You already mentioned the
demonstration
timeline
of
for what we're doing
Wirecast.
today. Great.
That's
Chuck.
our timeline, right?
Great, thank you, Chuck. I thought
Yes.
you had a question.
I do.
Great.
This question's for Michelle.
Mhm.
Okay. If you could explain the exception, because we're not leaving any money on the table. Exception is just our ability to raise taxes to that level, so.
We don't qualify for it.
We do qualify for the one, so when you say we're not gonna go for that, it's not as if there's monies that are out there that could come to us. We're not leaving any money, it's just could you explain what
This
is that?
is a
I can explain
demonstration
that.
of Wirecast.
When you apply for exceptions, you have to show the state that you have a need for the exceptions, and that is because you need to raise your taxes over the amount of the Act 1 index in order to have your revenues and your expenditures balanced. Applying for the exceptions means if you take those exceptions, you pass those costs on to your taxpayers. So it's not leaving any money on the table from the state, but it is leaving millage that
This
you're not
is
going
a
to be able to
demonstration
collect,
of
and as you know,
Wirecast.
millage increases from one year to the next. So if you don't take advantage of it in this current year, you will have lost that $14,000 that you would have been able to pass on to your taxpayers, and any ability to tax over and above that in future years. So I hope that answers your question.
Very good, thank you.
Great. Okay, is there anything else? Sure, go ahead, Amy.
Didn't go out of my head already.
You're on, you're
I know, trying to get it back in my head.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Getting old quickly here. So my question was, Susan, you mentioned earlier something different from what you mentioned just before, which was that in addition to the different opportunities we have potentially to close the gap, there are going to be potentially other demands on our budget. I thought I heard you mention that earlier, and in presenting the budget for us to make a decision, that's something I think you said
This
earlier
is a
might be helpful for us
demonstration
to
of
know that if we
Wirecast.
go this way, we might not be able to spend money on this or that, because there are some other expenses, capital, technology, blah, 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 coming down the pike. So I guess my ask is, would it be possible to also have that information so that you can make a decision about what exactly it is you want to spend your money on? That's the first thing. The second question was, I seem to remember we had 2 finance committee meetings last year in April, and one of them was a finance committee meeting of the whole again.
This is a
where those
demonstration of
buckets
Wirecast.
were presented. So is that something that you would entertain so that we go into the April meeting having had another chance to ask questions, because so much more information will be coming to us before that meeting?
I mean, I think that's fine, and Amy, I don't think I said anything different. I mean, we've all known that that no capital money's in the budget, and we know that we've had this technology initiative, and I think to your point, I think that was my intention when I said that. I mean, I think we need all of those things on that piece of paper.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Right. And I think depending on how the next couple of weeks go, if we feel like we need to plan another finance committee meeting of the whole, we will do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have often, exactly scheduled either finance committee of the whole, we called it a budget hearing, we can talk about how we want to do that. One of the things we did a little bit differently last year and new was we had our administrators all come forward and share a detailed list of all of our staffing and personnel for the district. And there was some discussion that since we did that
This is a
job
demonstration
last year,
of
we felt
Wirecast.
that, is that same presentation necessary this year? All of that information is still informing us in what we will be coming forward with a recommendation. But did the board want to have that similar presentation by individual administrators on the staffing, per building?
I mean, I'm happy to entertain that comment. I wasn't thinking we were doing that this year, but by all means, people weigh in. Do you want to do that or not?
I think Andrew and I just got that presentation as
This
board members.
is a demonstration
and
of
Cabinet was very kind to
Wirecast.
come and gave us a whole packet and explanation of their teams. So I think if that was being done for our benefit, because we didn't get that meeting last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel the need.
Right, I mean, if sure.
It was a snow day meeting, if I recall.
Surprise.
I mean, if the same function's already been carried out, no reason there to be redundant. Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Mike, you wanted a
This
meeting?
is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Trying to get to 250 in under 3 years.
Got it, okay. So I think, they've still got some yeoman's work to do, and we will be sure to circulate lots of relevant information to the board. Certainly if you have questions, happy to hear them. With that, we're gonna have second public comment.
Don't feel the need to fill.
Exactly.
Don't feel the need to fill the time.
2 minutes left.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Listening to this discussion, I heard one comment that for a member of the public and a taxpayer in Radnor Township was kind of a frightening comment. And that's how easily all of you just said that even though it's $14,000 we're talking about, and it's probably an eighth of a millage, we're talking a millage. How easy it was that if
This
we don't
is a
take it now,
demonstration
we
of
lose
Wirecast.
from Michelle correctly, that millage as our base for the next year, and that's a concern. My concern as a taxpayer is it would be nice to not even consider that, and to consider going the other way, reducing millage that wasn't even addressed in the comments that you were making in this meeting to me. As a taxpayer, that's frightening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there any other public comment? Alrighty, seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Well, excellent.
Hey.
Rod.